Since October 2009, League of Legends has been around, and in this series I will discuss the lore of every in-game character in order of release date. If you'd like to see more or support me directly, then please subscribe to the channel.
Ashes, ashes, they all fall down.
Annie is an enormously powerful pyrokinetic kid mage who is dangerous and surprisingly bright. She is a mystical anomaly, even in the shadow of the mountains north of Noxus. Although she ultimately learned to regulate these techniques, her early emotional outbursts were a natural manifestation of her affinity for fire. Her favorite is when she calls upon her cherished teddy bear, Tibbers, to transform into a flaming beast intent on destroying everything. Annie, enchanted with childhood's unending purity, roams the shadowy woods in search of a playmate. Annie's father was Gregory Hastur. The two wizards, Gregory Hastur and Emmeline Kiosar, left Noxus' capital city because they were unsure of Boram Darkwill's authority. Gregory was unaware that Emmeline was actually a runaway from Ravenbloom Conservatory, a school that was controlled by the Black Rose, where she had been experimented on, fused with a demon by the name of Tybalt. Emmeline fell pregnant when the couple settled in the Iron Spike Mountains. A stuffed teddy bear that Emmeline made in preparation of her child's birth was inspired by the enigmatic shadow bears that are said to prowl the areas around. Annie was born when Emmeline unexpectedly went into labor while she was finishing the toy. Annie's mother knitted her a teddy bear, which she received as a newborn. Annie and her father were ill when Annie was a toddler, suffering from a fever so high that Emmeline was unable to touch her. After failing in her attempt to reduce her daughter's fever with river ice, Emmeline turned to the demon Tybalt in a last-ditch attempt to save her. Emmeline's life was lost when the devil was infused into Annie's stuffed animal, curing Annie's ailment miraculously. The following morning, Gregory found Annie in her crib, free of her fever and occupied with her plush animal, which she had renamed Tibbers, but Emmeline was nowhere to be found. As Annie grew older, her hidden magical powers started to come into play, enabling her to control the fireplace's flames without her father realizing. Annie was naive enough to think that her mother would come back one day, and she would frequently be seen waiting for her mother to come back by the fireplace in her mother's rocking chair, holding Tibbers close. Gregory fell in love with Liana, a settler's daughter who had a daisy of her own, as more people started to settle in the Iron Spike Mountains. Liana's family merged with Gregory's after a quick marriage, making Liana Annie's new stepmother. Annie started to bother Liana, and she would frequently uncover her macabre crayon drawings of Tibbers and Emmeline. As sisters, Daisy and Annie, however, grew close. But Daisy was afraid of Tibbers and Annie's fire magic, which she frequently resulted from Annie's explosive temper. The two pursued a fairy through the forest and tracked it to a river when they were playing outside. Annie objected about Daisy following it across the river, but Daisy started skipping stones to get to the fairy, slipping and losing her footing. Annie held out her bear so Daisy's stepsister could hold on as the flood began to swallow her. Tibbers gleamed with a faint fire, and Annie's magical powers flared as long as Daisy held on. Annie's magic scared Daisy so much that she lost control of Tibbers and drowned in the river, leaving Annie unable to save her friend. As Annie was grieving the loss of her stepsister, she heard Liana accuse Annie of being a monster in front of Gregory. Annie, overcome with sorrow and sadness, fled to her room and wept, while gradually losing her magical control and igniting her room. As soon as Gregory went into his daughter's room and dragged her out of the blazing house, the entire house began to fire. Some of the ceiling debris fell as the house collapsed, causing Gregory to sacrifice himself to save Annie and risk death from being crushed by the falling debris. With the entire house in flames, Liana verbally and physically attacked Annie, accusing her of being responsible for everything. After Liana grabbed Tibbers from Annie, she attempted to break the bear to bits out of frustration. This made Annie furious, and she sent forth the demon Tybalt, who for the first time animated Liana's teddy bear and ripped her to pieces. Annie wandered into the countryside by herself, terrified and orphaned, with only her bear Tibbers for company. Annie avoided the capital city and roamed the northern regions of Noxus, thinking most city Noxians would be like her despised stepmother. Occasionally, when traveling, Annie would try to persuade a family to adopt her and care for her, but anytime anyone tried to separate Annie from her plush bear, the result was typically a fire and fatalities. Annie was given a trademark pink and purple costume and horn tiara when she was adopted by a family at some point. Although it is unclear what happened to them, it's assumed that Annie's uncontrollably strong fire magic killed them. Annie eventually found herself in a bar owned by Marcin, one of the bartenders. With ominous intent, Annie skipped through the doors of the tavern and requested Marcin for a cup of milk. Confused, Marcin obliged. Annie gave him a full bag of cash, which was more than enough to pay for the girl's cup of milk. After hearing about the huge quantity of gold and catching a glimpse of it, a bounty hunter in the area demanded to know where the woman had found the money. Annie let Tibbers loose as the bounty hunter persisted in taunting the young girl, and he promptly tore the guy to pieces and set the pub on fire. With a smile, Annie thanked the bartender and left the building as it fell apart into ashes. The Ravenbloom Conservatory sent a scout named Finn Redrick to investigate after hearing tales of a girl with firepower wandering in the northern Ironspike Mountains. When Finn, who had previously known Emmeline well, discovered Annie, she instantly understood that she was Emmeline's daughter. Sent to recover the demon Tybalt, Finn brought Annie back to the school with him to become their newest student after learning what Emmeline had done with her. Annie made friends with most of her classmates in the conservatory. They were all young people with magical powers. These included a child named Sidel, an oofy cat Vistea named Dani, and a brilliant pupil named Faye. Annie demonstrated a strong aptitude for fire magic to the school and gained significant importance as a result of her close relationship to Tybalt, a valuable resource the school sought to reclaim. Because Annie's disobedience was too tough for the school staff to monitor and reprimand, Annie was a volatile and mischievous student. Annie finally lost her cool and unleashed the full power of Tibbers, setting the entire school on fire and requiring everyone to flee as the academy burned to the ground. And that is the story of Annie. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.